I strode into the Raltech Solutions boardroom, my heels clicking on polished wood. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Richard sat at the head of the table, his coffee cup frozen mid-sip, his face drained of color, eyes wide, like he'd seen a ghost. He had. Me, Emma, the stepdaughter he threw out 6 years ago. Now I stood before him, the new CEO of his company, his empire, my victory. Let me take you back to where this began. Picture a rainy night, my 18th birthday. I stood outside our house, clutching a suitcase soaked to the bone. Richard's words echoed, "You're an adult now. Get out." My mom's inheritance, meant for my future, was gone, funneled into his tech firm. I slept in my car that night, tears mixing with rain. I was alone, betrayed, with nothing but a flickering hope I'd make him pay. Have you ever dreamed of proving someone wrong after they crushed you? What would you do if someone stole your future, and you got the chance to take it back? Here's how I did it. My name's Emma, and I was 15 when cancer stole my mom. She was my world. Late-night talks over hot cocoa, her laughter filling our small kitchen, her dreams for me written in every hug. "You'll go to college, Emma," she'd say, tucking my hair behind my ear. "You'll make something of yourself." She'd saved for years, building an education fund to ensure my future. When I was 12, she married Richard, a tech entrepreneur with a sharp smile and promises of stability. He was charming then, bringing Mom flowers, but to me, he was a stranger who never lingered long enough to talk. I thought he'd warm up eventually. I was wrong. Mom's illness came fast. At the hospital, her hand weak in mine, she whispered, "Richard will make sure you're taken care of. I've arranged everything." I believed her. I had to. After she passed, I clung to her memory. Her photo on my nightstand, her old scarf I wore on tough days. But Richard changed. The charm vanished. He barely spoke to me, his eyes cold like I was a tenant who'd overstayed. Our house, once warm with Mom's love, felt like a museum of her absence. I threw myself into school. I studied late, acing exams, determined to honor Mom's dreams. To pay for textbooks and clothes, I worked weekends at a grocery store, bagging apples and smiling through exhaustion. My grades earned me acceptances to colleges. State University was my top choice. I'd lie awake, imagining Mom's pride when I walked across that graduation stage. Her education fund was my lifeline, the one thing Richard couldn't take. Or so I thought. I was naive about him. At 17, I still hoped he'd see me as more than an obligation. He'd nod when I mentioned school, and I mistook his silence for approval. My 18th birthday seemed like a turning point. Richard planned a dinner, just the two of us at our dining table. He even ordered my favorite, lasagna from the Italian place Mom loved. He was attentive, asking about my college plans, and I let myself believe he cared. I relaxed, my guard down, feeling a flicker of family. "I got accepted to State University," I said, smiling, cutting into my lasagna. "Mom would be so proud." Richard leaned back, his fork still. "Your mother isn't here anymore," he said, voice flat. "And neither will you be after tonight." I froze, my fork clattering. "What?" "You're 18, he said, standing, arms crossed. "You have until midnight to pack and leave. Your mother's money, her insurance, her savings, I've used it. My company needed it more than you do." The room spun. Mom's fund, her careful planning for my education, was gone. Stolen. He'd funneled it into Raltech Solutions, his software firm. I begged, my voice shaking. "I start college next week. I worked for years to afford it. Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem," he said, turning away. "You're an adult now." I stumbled to my room, rain hammering the windows. My suitcase filled quickly. Mom's scarf, her photo, a few clothes. By 11, I stood outside, soaked, clutching everything I owned. Richard didn't even look out the window as I drove away. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, Mom's photo on the dashboard, my tears unstoppable. Everything I'd trusted, Richard, my future, was gone. But something inside me refused to break. Mom's voice echoed, "You'll make something of yourself." I wouldn't let Richard win. Have you ever trusted someone only to see their true colors too late? What would you hold on to if everything was taken away? For me, it was Mom's belief in me, and a plan to take back what was mine. The rain was relentless that night, but Richard's betrayal cut deeper. As I packed my suitcase, his shadow loomed in my doorway. "Your mother only married me because she was desperate," he said, voice sharp as a blade. "I never signed up to raise someone else's kid." His words landed like punches, each one stripping away the fragile hope I'd clung to. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Richard had been planning my removal for years, and I'd been too trusting to see it. Looking back, the signs were there. When I was 16, I'd noticed him locking his home office, a room I used to wander into for printer paper. "Stay out," he'd snapped once, slamming the door. I thought he was just private. Then there were the late-night calls with someone named Marcus, their voices low, discussing investments and legalities. I'd overheard Richard say, "The girl won't know until it's done." I assumed it was about his company, Raltech Solutions. I was wrong. He was talking about me. After Mom died, Richard had full control as my guardian. She'd left a will and a life insurance policy, carefully set up to secure my education. On her deathbed, she'd promised, "It's all arranged for you, Emma." But Richard saw her money as his opportunity. With his business partner, Marcus, a slick accountant with a knack for bending rules, he manipulated everything. The will, meant to protect me, had a loophole. The funds weren't legally mine until I turned 21. As my guardian, Richard could manage them. He didn't just manage, he stole. "The money your mother left isn't legally yours yet," he told me that night, his tone cold, like he was reading a contract. "As your guardian, I made investment decisions. Consider this a business lesson." I stood frozen, my hands trembling as I folded Mom's scarf. "You used my college fund?" I asked, voice breaking. "For what?" "Raltech needed capital," he said, shrugging. "We expanded, new offices, bigger contracts. Your mother's money made that possible." I felt sick. Mom's savings, every penny she'd scraped together, had fueled Richard's ambition. Raltech Solutions, a mid-sized software firm, was now thriving because of her sacrifice. My future, my college, my dreams, was collateral damage. Marcus had helped, I later learned, falsifying documents to make it look like the funds were reallocated legally. They'd planned it before Mom was even gone. Their private meetings a quiet conspiracy I'd never suspected. Then came the final blow. As I packed, I searched for Mom's jewelry box, a cheap wooden thing with a tiny ballerina that spun to a lullaby. It held her wedding ring, a locket with my baby picture, her handwritten notes to me. "Where's Mom's jewelry box?" I asked, panic rising. Richard leaned against the doorframe, unbothered. "Oh, that? I had the attic cleared last month. Old junk. It's gone." Gone. Her ring, her locket, the notes in her handwriting, thrown out like trash. I sank to my knees, tears burning. Those weren't just things, they were my last pieces of her. Richard watched, unmoved. "But where am I supposed to go?" I pleaded, my voice raw. "I don't have anyone else." "That's not my problem anymore," he said, checking his watch. "You're 18. You're an adult now." The depth of his cruelty hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about money or a house. Richard had erased me from his life, piece by piece, with the precision of a surgeon. The locked office, the secret calls, the discarded heirlooms. It was all deliberate. He'd never seen me as family, only as a burden to shed. I'd trusted him, believed he might one day care, but he'd been plotting my exile since Mom's funeral. As I dragged my suitcase to my car, rain soaking my clothes. Something shifted. Shock gave way to clarity. Richard thought he'd won, that I'd fade away, broken. But Mom's voice echoed in my head. You'll make something of yourself. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a strategist, and this betrayal was my starting line. What hurts more, losing material possessions or realizing someone never cared about you at all? How would you react if someone stole not just your money, but the last connection to your departed parent? For me, the answer was clear. I'd fight back, and Richard would regret underestimating me. Rain pounded my car as I sat in the driver's seat, my suitcase and a trash bag of clothes crammed in the back. The Walmart parking lot was dark, the world blurry through the windshield. My phone buzzed with birthday wishes, friends posting "Happy 18th, Emma" with cake emojis, clueless that I was homeless. I scrolled through their messages, each one a reminder of what I'd lost. My home, my mom's savings, my future. Richard's voice echoed, "You're an adult now." I was 18, alone with $47 in my wallet and no plan. The reality crashed over me. No family, no money, no place to sleep tomorrow. I hugged my knees, Mom's scarf around my neck, its faint lavender smell the only piece of her left. Then the radio betrayed me. A soft melody started. Fleetwood Mac's Landslide, the song Mom used to sing while cooking dinner, her voice warm and off-key. I broke. Sobs tore through me, loud and ugly, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I was supposed to be planning college, not surviving. How had it come to this? I didn't sleep that night. The parking lot lights buzzed, cars came and went, and I sat awake, jumping at every sound. By morning, my eyes were swollen, my body stiff. I drove to a gas station, clutching a plastic bag with my toothbrush and soap. In the public bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, avoiding the mirror. But then I looked up. My reflection stared back, pale, tired, a stranger. "You're not done," I whispered to myself, voice shaky but firm. "Mom believed in you. You'll find a way." I had to ask for help, and it burned. I'd always been proud, the girl who worked weekends and aced finals without complaint. Now I dialed friends, my stomach twisting with every call. "Hey, can I stay with you for a bit?" I'd start, then explain. Richard kicked me out. I had nowhere to go. Most friends were kind but helpless. Their parents said no. Too much responsibility, not enough space. One friend's mom offered a night, but her tone made it clear it was temporary. Each rejection stung, forcing me to repeat my humiliation. "I'm homeless. I'm alone. Please." By noon, I sat in a coffee shop, nursing a $2 tea, my phone nearly dead. I'd called 7 friends. No one could take me in long term. The weight of it crushed me. Pride, hope, everything. I wasn't just grieving Mom or Richard's betrayal. I was grieving the life I'd planned. But as I stared at my last text, a refusal from a friend's dad, something shifted. I couldn't stay broken. Mom's voice, faint but steady, pushed through. "You'll make something of yourself." I didn't know how, but I'd survive this. I'd rebuild not for Richard but for her, for me. That moment, sipping lukewarm tea, was my turning point. Vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was fuel. I'd find a place to stay, keep studying, and one day, I'd make Richard face what he'd done. How would you rebuild when you've lost everything overnight? Have you ever hit rock bottom but found strength you didn't know you had? I did. And it changed everything. I sat in my car, phone battery at 3%, hands shaking as I dialed the last number I had left. Janet, Mom's college friend. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral, but Mom always said, "Janet's family, Emma, she's solid." The line rang twice. "Emma?" Her voice was warm, worried. "What's wrong?" I choked out the truth. Richard kicked me out, stole Mom's money, left me with nothing. Before I could finish, she said, "Get to my house, now. You're staying with me. An hour later, I pulled into Janet's driveway, rain still falling. She met me at the door, pulling me into a hug. You're safe here, she said, taking my suitcase. Her small house smelled of coffee and lavender, like Mom's old scarves. She made up her couch with a quilt, handed me dry clothes, and sat me down with a mug of tea. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Richard's cold dismissal, Mom's stolen savings, the discarded jewelry box. Janet's face hardened. I never trusted him, she said. Your mom loved him, but I saw his greed. He fooled her. Janet wasn't just a friend. She was a corporate finance expert, someone who'd climbed the ranks at a major bank. As I spoke, her eyes narrowed, piecing things together. He used your mother's life insurance and will, I said, voice breaking. He said it was for his company, ruthless Solutions. My college fund's gone. Janet leaned forward, her voice steady. Your mother would be furious, but she'd want you to be smart, not just angry. Let's figure out what he did. Over the next hour, Janet broke it down. As my guardian, Richard had legal access to Mom's funds until I was 21. He'd likely funneled the money into Raltech through investments, probably with help from his shady partner Marcus. It's not just theft, Janet said. It's calculated. He planned this for years. I clenched my fists, anger boiling. I don't just want my money back, I said. I want him to know how it feels. Janet nodded, her expression thoughtful. Then you need to beat him at his own game. I can help you learn how. She didn't promise quick revenge. Instead, she offered something better, a strategy. Richard's playing a long game, she said. You can too. Get educated, learn his world, and take back what's yours. Not with fists, but with brains. Her words lit a spark. I'd been reacting, drowning in grief and rage. Now I saw a path. I could outsmart him. That night, I decided to fight back, not with tears, but with knowledge. Janet cleared a corner of her home office, a small desk, an old laptop, a stack of notebooks. Your war room, she called it, half smiling. I enrolled in community college the next day, focusing on business classes. When I wasn't studying, I researched Raltech Solutions. Janet taught me how to dig, public records, financial reports, employee reviews. I learned Richard's company was growing fast but sloppy. He cut corners on cybersecurity, leaving clients vulnerable. He underpaid developers, causing turnover. His expansion, funded by Mom's money, was shaky, built on quick deals and bad management. One night, poring over a competitor's report, I found my first real clue. Raltech's biggest client was frustrated with delayed projects. Richard's greed was his weakness, and I'd use it. I looked at Mom's photo on my desk, her smile pushing me forward. I'm coming for him, I whispered. Janet's mentorship and my own grit were turning pain into power. Have you ever turned pain into motivation to transform yourself? What would you sacrifice for years if it meant getting justice? For me, it was sleepless nights and every ounce of energy. I'd give it all to see Richard's empire crumble. 7 years passed like a montage of grit and growth. I transformed from a scared 18-year-old in a Walmart parking lot to a woman Richard would never recognize. My journey started at community college, where I studied business with a hunger that surprised even me. Late nights, cheap coffee, and Janet's encouragement pushed me through. I transferred to a state university, then earned an MBA, my focus razor sharp. I'm particularly interested in corporate restructuring and takeovers, I told my business school mentor, a sharp professor who saw my drive. She didn't know my real goal, but she taught me how to dismantle and rebuild companies like a chess master. I didn't just study, I strategized. I took jobs at Raltech's competitors, starting small, data analyst, then project manager, then consultant. Each role taught me the tech industry's pulse, how firms like Raltech thrived or failed. I learned their clients, their contracts, their dirty secrets. At conferences and networking events, I met people who'd crossed paths with Richard. A developer at a bar told me, "Richard Davenport? That man ruined my career when I questioned his security protocols." A supplier mentioned unpaid invoices. A former client complained about buggy software. Richard's pattern emerged. He cut ethical corners, manipulated finances, and burned bridges to climb higher. I built a network, not of friends, but of allies. People who didn't know my full plan but shared my disdain for Richard. A cybersecurity expert who'd been fired by Reltech. A lawyer who'd sued him over a shady deal. A venture capitalist who'd lost money to his promises. I listened, remembered, and filed every detail away. Meanwhile, Janet guided me on the side. She'd built wealth in finance and taught me to invest my meager savings, grocery store paychecks and scholarships, into small, smart stocks. "Grow your power quietly," she said. My bank account grew, but my real currency was knowledge. Every night I studied Reltech. Public filings showed their expansion, fueled by Mom's stolen money, had stretched them thin. Employee reviews on job sites revealed high turnover. Developers called Richard a tyrant. News articles hinted at client lawsuits over data breaches. I cross-referenced everything. My desk at Janet's covered in notes and coffee mugs. Then, in my final MBA year, I found it. Reltech was in a financial crisis. A major client had pulled out, citing unreliable services. Their stock was tanking, debts piling up. Richard's empire was crumbling, and he didn't even know I was watching. I sat back, heart racing. Reltech was vulnerable, a perfect target for a takeover. The idea hit me like lightning. I could buy his company, strip him of control, and make him face the stepdaughter he'd discarded. I spent weeks researching, modeling scenarios on spreadsheets. I'd need investors, a boardroom strategy, and flawless timing. My allies, those wronged by Richard, could help, but I'd keep them in the dark about my personal stake. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice. I laid out my plan for Janet one evening, papers spread across her dining table. I'd pool my investments, approach my venture capitalist contact, and pitch a takeover to Reltech's board, framing it as a rescue. Richard's mismanagement would be my leverage. Once I controlled the company, I'd fire him, expose his fraud, and rebuild Reltech into something honest. Janet read my outline, her eyes gleaming. "This is genius," she said. "Ruthless, but genius." I wasn't the broken girl Richard had thrown out anymore. I was a strategist, confident, capable, with a ruthless edge I hadn't known I possessed. But I hadn't lost myself. Every step honored Mom's memory, her belief I'd make something of myself. Staring at her photo, I felt a shift. I wasn't just his victim. I was a force he'd never see coming. Would you recognize the person you become after years of chasing one goal? At what point does justified revenge become dangerous to your soul? I wrestled with that, but my plan was set. Richard's downfall was mine to deliver. 7 years of planning led to this moment. I'd built my strategy brick by brick, and now it was time to execute. Through my network, I'd connected with investors burned by Richard's shady deals, a venture capitalist stiffed on a contract, a supplier he'd bankrupted, a client hit by his data breaches. They didn't know my full story, just that I had a plan to save Reltech Solutions from collapse. I formed a holding company, quietly buying Reltech shares as their stock plummeted. Janet's investment lessons paid off. My savings, combined with investor funds, secured 51% of the company. Richard had no idea the stepdaughter he'd discarded was now his boss. The board meeting was set in Reltech's sleek conference room. I wore a tailored blazer, my heels steady, Mom's scarf tucked in my bag for strength. As I pushed open the door, the room hushed. Richard sat at the head of the table, mid-sentence, his coffee cup raised. I locked eyes with him. "Hello, Richard," I said, voice calm. "It's been a while. I believe this seat at the head of the table is mine now." His face went white. the cup trembling in his hand. The board members, 6 men and women in suits, exchanged confused glances. "This is absurd," Richard sputtered, standing. "She's nobody. Just some girl with a grudge." I smiled, placing my briefcase on the table. "This nobody now owns 51% of your company," I said. "And I'm not just any girl. I'm Elaine Walker's daughter, the woman whose money you stole to build all this." Gasps rippled through the room. I opened my briefcase, pulling out a folder thick with evidence. "Let's review Raltech's recent history," I said, passing copies to the board. Under Richard Davenport's leadership, this company has faced client lawsuits, data breaches, and a 30% stock drop. Why? Because he prioritized quick profits over integrity. I projected a timeline on the screen detailing Richard's mismanagement. Unpaid vendors, skimmed security budgets, high turnover from his toxic leadership. The board leaned forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern. Then I dropped the bomb. "Most critically," I said, "Richard misappropriated funds from my late mother's estate, my education fund, to fuel Raltech's expansion." I slid bank records across the table, showing transfers from Mom's life insurance to Raltech's accounts, orchestrated by Richard and Marcus. This wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. A board member, a gray-haired woman, spoke up. "Is this true, Richard? Did you misappropriate funds?" Richard's mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes darted, searching for an escape. "Those were legitimate investments," he stammered. "As her guardian, I had discretion." "Discretion to steal from an orphan?" I countered, voice steady. "You left me homeless at 18, Richard, but I didn't break. I learned your game, and I played it better." The room was silent, the air heavy with tension. I turned to the board. "You have a choice. Keep a leader who's driven Raltech to the brink, or support me as your new CEO to rebuild trust and stability." The board erupted in questions, their voices sharp. Richard slumped in his chair, his empire unraveling. I made my final move. "Richard," I said, facing him directly, "I'm offering you a choice. Resign today with minimal severance, or I'll press charges for fraud and embezzlement. You'll lose everything, your reputation, your freedom." His jaw tightened, but he knew he was cornered. The board's stares burned into him. After a long pause, he nodded, defeated. "I'll resign," he muttered. As he gathered his things, the triumph I'd imagined for years washed over me. But it was hollow. I'd won, but the cost was heavy. Years of sleepless nights, a heart hardened by betrayal. Standing there, I realized I'd become more than Richard ever thought possible. A strategist, a leader, not just a victim. Yet I hadn't lost Mom's values. I'd rebuild Raltech honestly, for her. What would you say to someone who underestimated and discarded you once you've proven them wrong? Is it more satisfying to destroy an enemy or to take what they value most? I'd taken Richard's company, his pride, but the real victory was proving I was my mother's daughter. Richard shuffled through his office, stuffing papers into a cardboard box under my steady gaze. His tie was loose, his face flushed with defeat. The man who'd thrown me out at 18 looked small now, his empire stripped away. "You think you've won?" he snapped, shoving a pen into the box. "You have no idea what it takes to run this company." I leaned against the doorframe, calm. "I learned from your mistakes," I said. "Unlike you, I won't build my success on stealing from others." His eyes flashed, but he had no fight left. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, leaving a trail of resentment. That afternoon, I stood before Raltech's staff, developers, accountants, janitors, hundreds of faces staring back in the crowded auditorium. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for this company," I said, voice clear. "One built on integrity and innovation." Whispers spread, some clapped, others looked skeptical. I promised fair pay, better security, and client trust. After, a longtime coder approached me. "We've been waiting for someone to stand up to him for years," she confided. "He bullied anyone who questioned him." Her words hit hard. Richard's damage went beyond me. He'd hurt countless others. Walking through the office, I heard stories. A designer fired for suggesting fixes. A manager demoted for reporting a glitch. Richard's poor management had left scars. Low morale, rushed projects, lost contracts. I hadn't realized how many lives he'd disrupted. In his desk, I found a shock. Mom's photo, tucked in a drawer with bank records. Notes in Richard's handwriting confirmed he'd known exactly what he was taking. Mom's insurance, my college fund, all funneled into Raltech. He'd kept her picture like a trophy. My stomach twisted. I'd won, but the victory felt heavy. Sitting in the CEO's office that evening, I held Mom's photo, her smile soft in the dim light. I'd achieved my revenge. Richard was gone, his legacy mine to reshape. But now I carried the weight of hundreds of jobs, people counting on me to lead, not just destroy. Triumph mixed with doubt. Was I ready? I'd spent years chasing justice, but leadership wasn't just about settling scores. It was about building something better. I thought of Mom's belief in me, her dream that I'd make something of myself. I wouldn't mimic Richard's greed. I'd be the leader she'd have wanted. As I locked the office, Richard's car idled in the lot. He rolled down his window, voice low. "You'll fail, Emma. This isn't your world." I met his gaze, unflinching. "It is now," I said, "and I'll do it right." He drove off, his threat empty. Back in the quiet office, I sat at the desk, Mom's photo beside me. From a homeless teenager to CEO, my journey was complete. But it wasn't the end. It was a beginning. What would you do with power once you finally obtained it? Is getting everything you wanted always as satisfying as you imagined? I had my revenge, but the real challenge was what came next. 6 months into my role as CEO of Raltech Solutions, I stood in my office, sunlight streaming through the window. The company was changing. New cybersecurity standards, fair wages, and an employee education fund I'd started to help others like me. I'd turned Richard's mess into something Mom would have admired. But as I drove to her grave that weekend, her photo in my pocket, I wondered if she'd approve of the path I'd taken. Kneeling by her headstone, I traced her name. "I got it all back, Mom," I said softly. "And more. I hope you'd be proud of how I did it." The wind rustled the grass, and I pictured her smile. She'd wanted me safe, educated, secure. My revenge had been ruthless, taking Richard's company, exposing his fraud, but it gave me purpose. Would she have worried I'd lost too much to anger? Maybe. But I'd found my way back to her values, building instead of destroying. Word spread that Richard was struggling, blacklisted in the tech world after his resignation. Old colleagues shunned him. His reputation was ashes. I felt no joy, only closure. My real victory wasn't his fall. It was my rise. Janet visited my office one day, her eyes scanning the space I'd made mine. "Your mother wanted you to have an education and security," she said, smiling. "Look what you've built instead." I hugged her, grateful for the mentor who'd helped me turn pain into power. That week, I made a decision. Using Raltech's profits, the same profits Richard stole from Mom's savings, I established a scholarship fund in her name. It would support kids facing hardship, like I had at 18, giving them a shot at college, at dreams. The announcement went out and employees clapped, some teary-eyed. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine. I was creating something new, something bigger. Sitting alone later, Mom's photo on my desk, I reflected. Justice had fueled me, but healing came from building a future. The best revenge wasn't taking Richard's company. It was becoming someone he could never imagine I could be. A leader, a giver, my mother's daughter. Can justice and healing exist together, or does one always come at the expense of the other? What would you build if you could transform your deepest pain into your greatest purpose? For me, it's a legacy of hope, one scholarship at a time, carrying mom's love forward. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit subscribe and share this with someone who